Susan, we about ready to go?
I want to make sure everybody has their mics and everybody that is speaking is
You let me know.
Chris, are these all the same drawings we have in our packet?
Are we gonna? Okay. Are we gonna? Do we need to do a roll call or?
No,
Okay.
we're just going to announce it's a public hearing.
Okay.
The other thing is at the end, when we're done, did you want to do any wrap-up comments or at the end, Dylan would just have Paul? I think it'd be nice if you or if the PNC have other observations about like tonight, but it's not really necessary.
I guess we'll see what the is
Okay.
on that. Because my thought was just saying, we're going to be kind of just listening tonight for the most part, and we're going to be refocusing on this
I
in our
take
work session in
responsibility
2
for all
weeks.
problems. It's me.
Just so it doesn't.
Wait, are we saying something at the end or no?
I don't think so.
Awesome.
I think actually people appreciate gratitude more than anything.
And then we could go on our field trip.
Yeah. And so,
Did you look at the stakes?
I drove by there.
Did you understand them by driving by? Because I walked
did.
over and I was like, because you're not a...
I mean, I get it.
Right. In my head, I keep making you a lawyer. You're not a lawyer.
No.
You are an architect. So of course you understood the stakes, right? I was like, wow, that's amazing. But I always make you a lawyer. Yes. Son.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. We're going to begin at 5:35 this evening. Call this meeting of the Basalt Planning and Zoning Commission to order, and would like to thank you all for coming. Just to give you a little bit of a summary of kind of what the plan is tonight. The Planning and Zoning Commission had a work session 2 weeks ago where we went through some initial drawings that were prepared by a consultant to the town of Basalt, who's looking at how to sort of make a physical representation of what this master planning change might be. And this evening, we are here to listen to your comments. And also this evening, Paul Anderson is going to be facilitating the meeting and your comments and the presenters. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Paul.
Thanks, Dylan. And thanks, everybody, for being here. The last time we were in this room, it was a packed house. A few less people tonight, but I'm sure vocal group, and that's what we're here for. So we want a good dialogue here. That said, this meeting is not unlimited like the last one was. The last one, we had an open end. Tonight, we end promptly at 7 because then there's going to be a field trip over to the sites of Lions Park and the new park, so you can really look at the big V and some of the concepts that will be discussed here tonight. So we're going to keep comments as succinct and brief as possible, and ideally no repetitive stuff. So anyway, just to keep in mind, but again, thanks for being here and participating in this process. We're going to start with just an introduction overview by Mike Scanlon, Town Manager. Mike?
Thanks, Paul. Like Paul said, the last time we were here, packed room. Well, we're not going to talk about that yet. We're going to that film. We'll turn it down. Packed room, and one of the things was just trying to come up with a map after that discussion, and that map is right above Susan's head. And that big V that Paul just talked about, you can actually now go there and you can see it staked. You can kind of see where it runs across both the town parcel, the CDC parcel, and then the park parcel closest to the river. Just a quick update. May was one of the rainiest months in history. Of course, right when we're trying to work on parks along a river. We're a little behind, but we're trying to catch up. A week ago, we had problems with mud, and now our problem is dust. So today you'll notice that we were trying to control the dust that's right next to RMI. RMI continues their project with a hope that they're in there end of November, beginning of December. We continue to work on both the Midland Park, which is the park closest to the library, and then the park that's often called Pan and Fork, which is across the way. So you see a lot of grading, and you'll actually see, did we stake the CDC parcel? Yes. So there's actually the CDC parcel is staked out as well as that V, so that you get a feel for when people are talking about these plans tonight, where everything is. One of the questions that I got early on was the original low proposal was 150,000 square feet. And when we were giving direction to CCY in terms of if this is the map, how much square footage should we allow? We just used an arbitrary number, and it was 75,000. That was Susan and I don't know if that's the right number. It could be too high, it could be too low. But you have to start with some basis for the amount of square footage that you would like to consider in terms of the various options. This is just the latest in what I would say are the 7th iteration of the Our Town planning process. Our Town planning, community, then DAC. From DAC then came more lively citizen discussion. From that begot a map that the town council approved with resolution 19, I believe. Then it went to the Planning Commission. Planning Commission started directing CCY on what they were looking for in terms of options. I want to say that first round with the Planning Commission, was there 10 or 11? I mean, there was multiple iterations of these various ones, with the Planning Commission giving direction on the 3 or 4 that they wanted to look at further. One thing that often gets forgotten, and I need to continually remind people, is that the river improvements that the town did were all based on river restoration. And that included a lot of permits that we got with the Corps of Engineers related to going back and planting materials. We will be planting materials that will obstruct the river in time because of the requirements of the Corps of Engineer permit. We will try to modify where appropriate some of those plantings, but there's a lot of willow bundles that we plant in terms of river restoration and in terms of the permitting that's required by us with the Corps of Engineers. So with that, back to Paul.
Thanks, Mike. Now I'd like to introduce Tim Malloy, who is... Tim, if you could just introduce yourself and how you came to the project. Thank you.
Yes, hi. My name is Tim Malloy. Can you hear me? And I am a planning consultant working for the town now to help sort of craft the work that was done by you all and by the DAC committee into what's called a master plan amendment. And that's what I'm here to discuss tonight, and that's the first page of which you see on the screen here. And I have worked actually in planning for the town of Basalt probably for the last 15 years or so. I did the first, or really I think it was the second master plan the town did in 1999, and then I assisted in writing the master plan in 2007, and have just recently been put under contract by the town to update your plan again. So I've been in this dance with the town several times. So the first thing I want to talk about is why do a master plan amendment related to the Our Town planning process and the DAC report? There are a handful of reasons. One of them is probably more compelling than some of the others, but the first one that I want to talk about is the fact that the master plan that you adopted in 2007 is a requirement of state statutes. Every municipality is required to have a master plan, and it required that when you do quasi-judicial actions like rezonings or changes to your land use code, that those actions be reviewed for compliance with the master plan. And in fact, the town has adopted in your municipal land use code a number of provisions that require a review of compliance with the master plan, really for almost every review that you do. Section 16-9 of your code requires a review for compliance with the master plan for site plan review, special review, PUD approvals, rezonings, and land use code amendments. So it is both a state requirement and a requirement in your municipal code to review projects for compliance with the master plan. So now you have a planning process that has occurred, some recommendations have come from that, and you want to sort of codify that into something that will become a formal part of your development review process. And that's what this is for. So we're doing a formal amendment to the 2007 master plan. Some of the other reasons for doing the master plan amendment are that it provides guidance not only for the decision makers and support for their decisions should they be challenged, it provides guidance for developers so that they know what to do, which is going to be at least consistent with your intent as expressed in the DAC report. It also provides continuity across time. It doesn't really matter who is sitting in the chairs of the Planning Commission and the Town Council. They're always referring to that document, which was reviewed by the public, developed by the public, and adopted in accordance with state statutes. It protects the public interest in private investment, so people know that we're planning an appropriate street alignment, appropriate sewer system, and other infrastructure in accordance with a plan that's been carefully considered, so that we don't build something here that we have to tear up in a year or two. And it also provides a plan for the protection of valued resources. And in particular, we're looking here at protecting the valuable resource of access and the environment associated with the river corridor. So those are the reasons why we're doing an amendment to the master plan that's flowing from your community process, the Our Town planning process. So the master plan amendment that we're talking about has 4 basic components. The first is a text component, which you're seeing the first page of here. And I'll go very briefly through that and just give you a summary of what's in there. The second component is amendment to the future land use map. And if any of you have seen the 2007 Basalt master plan, you'll see that in there that there are some maps that are referred to as future land use plans. And they show the recommended land uses for all of the parcels within the town of Basalt. And in fact, indeed, some recommendations for the area within the 3-mile area. The third part is to include in totality the DAC report, we're referring to as the Our Town planning map, which has been slightly modified via the review that the Planning Commission did and the Town Council did. And in fact, that modification is shown on the map that was included in Resolution 19, which preserves this V that we're talking about and identifies the area on the west end of the Pan and Fork site as available for development. So the last piece of the amendment is what's called an amendment to the typology map and the typology descriptions. Your master plan includes a section referred to as typologies, and essentially that section is intended to sort of show this is the kind of character that we want to see occur in this particular area. The land uses are defined on the future land use map, and the character that we're trying to achieve is shown in the typology section. So we're going to amend the typology map as well as add some descriptions, some photographs, some images, some discussion about what sort of character you want to achieve when you go to develop the area within the Our Town planning study area. And so here you see this first figure in the master plan update, or the master plan amendment, is essentially these yellow parcels is the study area, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. We have some paragraphs that talk about the background, the Our Town planning process, the study process, and then we come to the authority and adoption. And this is language that is sort of similar to what I just described to you about how the authority for master planning and for amending the master plan comes from the state statutes. And then the paragraphs on this page talk about how the master plan should be used and the fact that it's going to be used in concert with your existing master plan, the goals and objectives that are contained in that document, that we want to make sure that there's room for flexibility so that you're not too tied to a particular scheme, that you have some flexibility to discuss with developers and landowners creative solutions that meet the intent of the Our Town planning process and the DAC report, but it's not totally inflexible. We're also then on this page looking at the bottom talking about the revision to the future land use map. I'll show you that map actually in a second. In the master plan update, in addition to the recommendations that are contained in the DAC report, there are also a few others that we're talking about. And one is the potential for rezoning. Rezonings need to be done in accordance with the master plan. And there are 2 ways that can be done. One is on a case-by-case basis when a developer brings a project to you. And the other is in a sort of more proactive way where the town can actually sponsor a rezoning itself and rezone, say, for example, all of the parcels within the study area. But these recommendations have to do with only the land within the Our Town study area. And there are a few other recommendations as well. One is to review your land use code for some potential appropriate zone districts that might be considered for the land within the study area. And also, we have some recommendations that the Two Rivers Greenway plan be implemented as soon as possible, that the downtown parking and an alternate site or a potential site for the town hall be considered. And these recommendations are generally thought to occur in the next round of updating your master plan, although they revised future land use plan. And really all this document is doing is it's saying, for this area that's within the study area, you need to be referring to, and this is for developers and anyone who's interested in looking at what should be occurring within this area, you need to be referring to the Our Town planning map that's in the DAC report, or that is part of the DAC report, and the recommendations that are contained in the DAC report. And then this is that Our Town planning map, which has been amended by the Planning Commission and by the Town Council via Resolution 19. And this is sort of a first draft of the typologies pages. So there's going to be a typologies map, which is going to include 1 or 2 additional typologies. That is to say, we're calling in this one, for example, Our Town Vitality Area, but there might be some other names that we use depending on what we're trying to accomplish. But this sheet is really showing sort of some character issues related specifically to vitality, open space, parks, how the street should be addressed, how development should feel and be experienced by people. The second page here is really more about architectural character, the street front, and the connections to the river and so forth. So you can see that, that we're using a combination of sketches and images and text that describe what somebody should be thinking of when they're looking at development within this area. And then the rest of this is the Downtown Area Advisory Committee report and its recommendations, which I'm sure most of you have seen, and I don't think we need to go through that. So that's my description. If there are any questions about any of that, I'd be happy to answer those. Yes?
It's on our town planning website.
Any others? Okay.
Thanks, Tim. If you couldn't read the text up there, don't go to the optometrist. It was a little fuzzy. Next, I'd like to bring John Cottle up to give... Oh, Susan, okay.
You know, my job task here was just to kind of... Right. They just asked me to do a couple things. One is just to maybe emphasize a couple things that were mentioned earlier, and kind of have a segue to what you're going to be seeing with John Cottle. So Mike mentioned resolution number 19, but there was an earlier resolution that the town council approved, which really took and accepted the doc report, said what the next steps were, and it included this table 1. Also, you can download that on the Our Town planning page, but what its main focus was try to give the work back to different boards and committees in the town. So the P&Z actually was assigned 2 major tasks. One is updating the master plan, and the other is zoning. So what we're asking you to do today is to make comments that are going to help the P&Z do those 2 things. So what we're looking for the public to comment on is the amendment to the master plan that you heard Tim explain. And then we want you to comment on the proposed building and park plan. And that's that map over here. And then also, we want you to help the P&Z provide information on the level of development and where those building envelopes are. So you see on the chart here that we want you to comment on the acceptable uses, the number of stories, the square footage of buildings, and the building envelopes. And what's going to help get you there maybe is the options that we asked CCY to prepare. So we heard a lot of feedback from the public and the council when we had our low discussions, and we had direction for the P&Z to consider. So as Mike said, there were a number of options that the P&Z looked at. They looked at them at their May 19th meeting. And then what the P&Z did is they kind of narrowed down the focus because it's really confusing, I think, for the public and for everyone to see a million different options. So they asked CCY to refine what we are going to be calling 3C and 3E, and also to talk a little bit about this option 4. And you probably, many of you maybe have seen the option 4 for the first time. It was, option 4 was something that the town council looked at their breakfast meeting before they adopted this resolution. They thought that had some merit to look into, and so we just kind of carried that forward. So I think the other point that I would like to make is that the P&Z hasn't really delved into the refinements that you see here today in terms of the building envelopes and the square footages, and they'll be doing that more at their meeting on the 19th. So the goal here is to get public comment, not to have a dialogue going back and forth. So once someone speaks, we're not going to have another opportunity, because we want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to speak. So going to the Our Town Planning website, you can Google it very easily, and there's an opportunity to click on that, or you can just send something to me at susanp@basalt.net. It's another easy way. So with that, was there anything else I was supposed to highlight? With that, I guess I'll turn it over to John Cottle to talk about the options.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me okay without the mic? We need it for the recording. No. Okay. Do you want me to project the options? No, I thought, I mean, I'm going to keep it. My role is really to explain the drawings which are in your packet, make sure everybody understands what's there and why it's there. And of course, the board. So I'm going to, if it's okay with everybody. This is going to be pretty casual. Is that okay, voice-wise? Kind of start out by explaining some things. First of all, it's been mentioned, but I think it bears repeating. We have obviously done some work with Lowe. We are not currently doing some work with Lowe, but these are our diagrams. This is for the community. It's been commissioned by the community, and it's for us, through P&Z and council, to come up with zoning. If Lowe chooses to go forward, then they would be the developer, but there's also obviously a chance that Lowe would not. So the zoning that we come up with would be for a future developer. And Tim just went through zoning very, very thoroughly. I just think of it, I mean, in really simplistic terms. It's a box that somebody understands what the town wants and they can build. So it would have uses, height, size, some real basic things. Let's see. So of the parcels, and the parcels that the town asked us to look at, there are 3 of them, and if you count the greater park, there are 4. But so for terminology, the CDC parcel in pink, Merino Park, and Lions Park. And it's important for everybody to keep in mind that the purpose of this is to get feedback on all of these. And it's been mentioned, but mentioned again, this pink parcel for the CDC parcel is half the size of the parcel that Lowe made a proposal on. And it was mentioned, but the Lowe proposal was 150,000 square feet. So since this is half the area, it's pretty simplistic math. It's right in here. The goal was to say on the CDC parcel, can we get half of the previous parcel, can we get 75,000 square feet? And to further define that, that was within 2- and 3-story buildings. So that was the charge, so that's what these diagrams represent. The other thing, as an architect talking about zoning, it's always kind of uncomfortable because this is not architecture, it's zoning, so it's really blocky and it doesn't look fantastic yet. But that's, again, that's the purpose here, is to get to zoning. So also, in all of these diagrams, there is CDC parcel program, Merino Park parcel program, Lions Park parcel program, each one. And there are a lot of pluses and minuses on here. They're given so that you can kind of understand the basic magnitude. So on the CDC parcel, 75,000 square feet, a hotel and restaurant of about 47 keys, plus or minus 23, and this is this one option. But so these are kind of example programs for everyone to get a feel for the scale. And then, as Paul mentioned, the great part, all of these numbers tie to flags, which are on the site and are really fantastic to walk around. So that's the idea here, is we're going to go through this on paper and then be able to walk on the site and see how it feels out there. So there are flags on the big V, there are flags to mark this, there are flags to mark the edge of the CDC. It's really fantastic. All right, that's introduction. So then what's been called option 3C, this one right here. And then to explain the boards a little bit further, we explained the program. This was a plan diagram that was presented to P&Z, I think, 2 weeks ago. And there have been, as was mentioned, I think there have been actually 12 options which have been initially studied. So out of the options and the iterations of the options, there were some that P&Z had more interest in than others. So 3C was one, and then based on their interest and input, they were then three-dimensionalized, which is what these represent. So there's 3C and 3E. Very evocative names, are the primary ones. And let me explain it again. Then the main image for 3C, just orientation, the Roaring Fork River. Computers make some of these things a little hard to follow, but Roaring Fork River, this is Midland Avenue, this is Two Rivers Road, the half of the CDC parcel, the Merino parcel, and Lions Park. So, and because I think maybe the community hasn't talked about these as much, it might make some sense to start here. So, and the Lions Park and the Merino parcel are the same on both of these. And so it's a starting point or a placeholder or whatever we want to call it. But Lions Park, and then if you go down in here, this block, and you can see the lines, so you can see the floor levels, as a starting point. So that is showing a 2- and 3-story building, and you could call that 2.5 for some. So it's partially 2 stories, partially 3 stories. Gross building area, 24,000 square feet. The ground floor of that is, between 8,000 and 9,000 square feet. And I talked to Kelly. I don't know if Kelly's here. She's going to be here, I think, Kelly Alford. So the Wiley's master plan, their desire is they think they can take over the building they're in, the town hall building, and the annex, the one that's currently on Midland Avenue. That would equate to, I think, and this is really rough, Kelly and I just chatted about this, but that would roughly fill the ground level of that building. So as a community, and by the way, this building is designed to basically fit within the existing tree, and you can see that. That's at least a starting point. So as a community, we could say, well, we want more room for an arts campus, so the ground level of this should be larger, for instance. And or this, I happen to think, is a fantastic site for maybe attainable or other kinds of housing, so maybe we want more housing in there than 24 minus 8, about 16,000 square feet, or about 12 flats, as an example of 1,000 square feet. That would be feedback that would be good for P&Z to hear. Or it's too big and it should stay park. So does that explain this block and this diagram for Lions Park? Okay. Yes.
The RMI building, which
Yes.
you see on the left-hand side, and you can see out there that the shell is about 13,600 or 800 square feet.
I thought it was 17. 15.6.
But that's not shown on
Right. Yeah, that's good. That's good. It's a two-story building with the part that's next to the road is very similar in height to a three-story building. It has a lot of volume within that 2 stories there. Okay, anything else for Lions Park for right now? So then Merino Park, the idea here, what's modeled, and again, guys, this is just modeling starting point, is that, oh, and by the way, just for scale, obviously, this building, which is right across from Town Hall right now, is currently a 5-story building. So that would be 3. This is shown at 4. And the idea is that with the hill, you'd actually just park on the ground level, and then there would be 3 levels of residential units above it here, and 2 levels in a detached building here. In terms of order of magnitude, that shows just under 20,000 square feet, 19,500, 8 townhomes, or 12 flats. And you guys can read that. So again, order of magnitude, that's those parcels. Then on the scheme 3C, what was, I think, intriguing with planning and zoning in this diagram form was that this could maybe be, sorry, in this diagram, this would be hotel still on this end, so there, and residential uses here, there. And it seemed like this could actually be, maybe it really lent itself to maybe being townhomes. So a little more, residential in scale, and that seemed pretty intriguing. And so we massed it up. Here it is massed up from the riverside, and then this is from the Two Rivers roadside, the smaller image, so you can see from both sides of the building. And what this shows, again, as a starting point, is parts of the building, relatively small parts of the building, but parts of the building are 3 stories, parts are 2 stories, and then set back to 3 stories. And you can see that on both the riverside and the Two Rivers roadside. So, I'll just, and I'm mostly here to explain, but our observations when we massed this up and looked at it, kind of our first reaction was, let's say if that's townhomes, it felt like it actually maybe privatized the river or intruded on the river perhaps more than some other schemes. That was our first thing. It has some maybe pretty nice street qualities, but that would be something for people to think about there. So that's 3C. 3E, and again, sorry, any questions on that so far? Explanations? 3E is 2 buildings, hotel on this end, hotel on this end, residential here, residential there. And the way it's massed is there's on the riverside, there is some 1, 3, 3, 2 stories. On the street side, it's all set back. 2 stories and then set back to 3rd story. Both of these schemes, by the way, and scheme 4, the assumption is that there's still parking underneath this part of the site. And what that allows, of course, is the required parking, the possibility of some public parking, but also keeping open space open for green or plazas rather than cars. And again, Lions Park, Merino Park, same on this, just that hasn't changed. And I'm going to go to 4D, 4D number 1, 4D number 2, 4D number 3, if you will. And the idea on this was, and it started, well, I don't know, it's been kicked around quite a bit for quite a while, but in the town council retreat in April, they were very intrigued with the idea of what happens if we get rid of Two Rivers Road in this section and all of the traffic goes there. So in this diagram, again, there's obviously the river, the bridge, can everybody see that? And development, RMI, residential, and moving into hotel up here. And that the council was very intrigued with that. So then the next evolution, which was the P&Z work session, May 19th, residential, and some of this also, then this came about from some public comment and some council comment that, boy, wouldn't it be fantastic if we could get a fisherman's hotel, little cottages on the river. So we're trying to get little cottages on the river, backed by residential use, and then a hotel. And maybe this could be the Wiley Arts Hotel, for instance. So there was some intrigue with that. And after the P&Z work session, there was a version which you might call it kind of a hybrid, but is presented here. And that is where Two Rivers Road stays in its current alignment through, let's say, the CDC parcel, and then it jogs up. And so this is all a park. And in this still, this is hotel, this is residential, and these are fishing cabins. And I think again, just observing, the reason this is not pulled into three-dimensional form is, I think, as it's been discussed a little bit and discussed within our office, the irony is, to me, it seems like there are two or three things. One is when you eliminate Two Rivers Road, it seems like actually a lot, it's harder to get to the park because it's literally physically farther in a lot of the road. So in some ways, the park's more cut off. It also, in all of these, it felt a little bit more wall-like than even this or this. That was an observation. And then one of the last ones was these little fishermen's cabins are going to rent for one hell of a price. And again, it seemed maybe a little curious, but that option's been taken that far, has not been taken any further, but if there's comment on that, we should hear it. I think that is all the explanation presentation I was anticipating doing. So I'll turn it over to Paul.
Thank you, John. Okay, that's a lot to digest, but now it's public comment time. So we can do our best to address the points on the board and these specific drawings. So we're going to pass microphones around, and again, we're televised, so please wait until the mic comes, identify yourself, and speak clearly. Thank you very much. Do I have a hand? Anybody want to speak?
Hi, I'm Carol Kirschner, and I thought we said we didn't want a hotel, and here's a hotel in every one. I don't know, I want more park. I want vitality brought here, not a bunch of buildings. I mean, this makes me sick.
Okay, thank you. And remember, the P&Z is listening, so you're speaking to them, and so please direct your comments to the P&Z, and thank you. Next comment, anybody? Oh, here you go.
Hi, I'm Patrice Becker, Basalt resident. I agree with Jerry's letter today and the letter to the editor. There wasn't a choice for no development. On the Our Town survey, option 2 is the one that I chose because it had the least amount of development, but I was never given a voice in this at all. I want to let you know, because I don't know how many other people here would have also voted for no development, but we didn't get that option.
Thank you. Do I see anybody else who wants? All right. Go ahead, Susan, and then Steve.
Sharon Hall. Which one is the one in the middle with the two buildings? 3E. 3E. I personally like 3E. I would love to see a condominium hotel. I like the fact that it's just two buildings. There seems to be what we've all talked about, which is open space and development. I think, Gino, I had sent you an email and some other P&Z members about having it be very important that the usage is as a condominium hotel, that it isn't just bought up with permanent residences that there has to be occupancy. They can't be second homes that are not used. So in my opinion, you really have to take a strong look at the usage on that they're either rented in the rental markets to create that vitality. And I would like to see that the condominiums be part of the hotel so that they have the same services of a hotel. And basically, I think I put that down on a comment to you in writing.
Thank you.
But I like it. I like the two buildings.
Thank you.
Steve Chase. In an effort to help P&Z make what's going to be a very, very important decision on behalf of the community, of course, you realize that the Our Town planning process went on for over a year and was advertised in the paper, and we had a private place in the Little Bear building, that was open to the public for well over a year with hundreds of people who participated. If somebody didn't get an opportunity to verbalize their concerns and their wants and desires, it escapes me. They can't possibly be a member of the community. But more specifically, when we talk about the Big V, which, as you must realize, is an arbitrary V, it's a place to start with, and I think it's important. But one of the things that's wrong with the Big V is that it's a horizontal depiction. It doesn't give us the vertical. It doesn't give us what the V would look like if one were to stand at Two Rivers Cafe and look down the Big V and see what is available to us visually, or to the barber shop at the end of Midland Avenue. The unique thing that we see in Basalt is that there's an elevation gain, and James is going to help me with that because I don't know the specifics of it, but from the river to the barber shop, there's a huge elevation gain. And so when one considers height and realizes that Gold River's court is 48 feet tall, if I'm not mistaken. If Ted Guy is here, he can confirm that. It's 48 feet tall. I don't know what 3 stories or 3.5 stories or 4 stories looks like. But in truth, if you stand in front of Tempranillo, you can see the top of the RMI building, which a portion of that is the equivalent of 3 stories. The front part of it is. So I would ask you, as you determine building height potential, is to take the V that you've been given and give it dimension. Talk about it in terms of elevation from different parts of the town. Because if one stands in front of Toclot, then Gold River's Court looks huge. But if you're standing in front of Two Rivers Cafe, all of a sudden you're almost at eye level with the 3rd floor. So this is a 3-dimensional process, and I would ask you to look at that. And another, finally, I would be very much against closing off Two Rivers Road. I think it's a traffic nightmare to do that, not only because of RAFTA, but because of the trailers and boats that come through Basalt on their way up to the Route I. Trying to create a cutesy little road that's already, that would be more difficult than what we already have, I think is a terrible mistake. I think closing off Midland Spur in part and that becoming part of a residential community would be a much better idea.
Thank you, Steve. Steve served on the DAC committee. Any other comments?
Patty Lecht. I have an offering just to show you from Telluride to give what Steve was asking for. It's a three-dimensional perspective, and what they did in Telluride was quite simply I'll bring it to you. They just took timber and constructed it so that all the town members could see exactly what it would look like in that three-dimensional form. Thanks. It's kind of fun. They did it in a couple of places in Telluride, and so we could stand around and have a real sense of it. And there it is. And the other thing, just wanting to make a contribution, is to hope that we can hold true to the idea that the trees wouldn't be demolished. We noticed in the park, and it was, and I guess, unavoidable, that the trees were taken down, but on this occasion, maybe we can make it so that there was a tremendous fine if by chance the trees were, somehow damaged during the processes. And it's a small thing, perhaps, but maybe not. Thanks.
Thanks, Patty. Do I hear from anyone else? Please identify yourself.
Hi, I'm Doug McLean, and I have a couple of comments. First, I'm not to be trusted because I'm probably the most impacted resident here on any of these plans, because I live in that L-shaped building on the far west side on the first floor unit. So all the plans affect where I live very strongly. But but I understand development. I'm not against development, and I think it's a good thing. But two things. When we met here last year, there was a plan that covered not just these parks, but also the downtown area, and I hope that hasn't been forgotten. And that, where the grocery store is and the parking lot and that, and we should, I hope people keep in mind that part, which is now, in my mind, sort of an eyesore compared to the parks, which are quite lovely, is also a place where a lot of the building could take place. So I'm not quite sure how fixed we are. This is for zoning, I understand. But when development comes in, I hope that it looks as much at some of the other areas that have been singled out for development as the parks. And the other thing is, I like the parks. I look right across at the Wiley Arts Center, so I don't mind buildings, but I like the parks, and a good bit of Lions Park will be sacrificed. That's a very lively, vibrant area now, especially in the summer when there's lots of musicals and events taking place in that shed and other things. I think those should be encouraged and expanded. If under any of these plans, if the buildings are built, I'm also very concerned about the height, and I don't get much of a sense here. And I do know that as we look at CMI, driving in, you get a sense of a wall, and it will certainly make where I live give me much more of an urban feel. Maybe, I've always wanted my pied-à-terre, and so maybe I'll get it. But it gives much more of an urban feel than an open feel. So I'm worried very much about the heights, and I don't know what those 3 stories mean. So trying to put my NIMBYism aside the best I can, I hope we'll continue to consider leaving as much park area as possible, or minimizing the impact on the park, understanding that we gain new park area as well, which is very nice. The last thing is that today is the first that I've understood about the plan maybe to close Midland Road and divert all that traffic onto the spur, and I think that would just be horrible. I'm also concerned if the hotel goes on there, where is the entrance and exit to the hotel? Does that go onto Midland Spur? That's going to be an increasingly difficult thing for what's now a very comfortable, relatively comfortable street leading to the main street in town for not just traffic, but for pedestrians and bicycles and everything else. That will make it much more difficult when we're competing with the trailers and the boats and the buses.
Thank you, Doug.
Hi, I'm Kathy Markle, and I was just reviewing in my little computer the existing master plan, future land use plans, things like that. And I'm concerned that because our community is so passionate about this parcel, that it's difficult for the community members to focus on it in terms of land use and zoning, and that it is really about site-specific development planning on this parcel and the parcel next to it. And I encourage the Planning Commission to consider the land use and zoning applications. That said, I really encourage you to look outside the town limits of Basalt as well as the limits of the Old Town Basalt, if it's fair to call it that. I'm on the Eagle County Planning Commission for unincorporated Eagle County. And so, and I work with the chamber also. I'm on the chamber board. And so I'm aware of, having gone to some events recently over at Willits, how much commercial space is already approved for build out, how much is being built, what the housing requirements and situations are there. I'm not as familiar with what the residential free market versus potentially affordable. And, you know, you're going to start seeing reviews for the tree farm project. And I'm just a very out of the box thinker, and I think that it's very difficult for you as a town planning commission, as it is for all of us in any of those organizations. We're not really allowed to think outside that box. We're allowed to discuss and think of only what is within our legal jurisdiction. But if there are ways that you can do that, I think that's very important. And I think the ways that you could do that would be encouraging connectivity in terms of paths, ensuring that there are river paths that access all the way up and down the river as much as possible. And right now we have a huge gap between basically Willits and Old Town Basalt. The bike path, as you know, routes people not into Basalt. And so I think it would be key to try to have a beautiful way to connect to the river section there. I think other things, of course, are transportation, and does that mean potentially some kind of inter-community, local commuter transportation? Because as you know, once you get in your car, if you live up on the hill here, you're going that way. So anything we can do to improve the connections, I think, between our areas of Basalt. And so I think that's master plan wide planning. I think that you could put a lot of investigation into the common interests of senior and millennial housing. I've attended a lot of workshops and seminars on this, and what nationally they're discovering is that the physical floor plan and living style elements of the group we call millennials and the group we call seniors are very, very similar. They don't want necessarily as much of the single family, mowing their own yards, etc. They want minimal, responsibilities, in a sense, on both ends of that spectrum, and that could probably be coordinated in addition to the studies we've done improving the living conditions of particularly the elderly by living with younger people nearby. That's all of us. We're old and young here. So I think that non-driving connectability is very important. So any kinds of trails, and particularly making use of the rivers. I think that including housing, I think the only way to support commercial businesses is to have people who live near them, right? So we've got to have places for people to spend short amounts of time, and we've got to have places for people to live. And I think we're becoming an increasingly desirable area to live. And I know that the housing options that exist today in the free market are not what you would call affordable, to a millennial or a senior necessarily, or to a lot of us who are just working stiffs. We got here first. And so I think it's really important to include some level of, I don't know how you're going to do it, I don't even want to use the word deed restricted because of all that, what it brings up, but let's look into that in terms of master planning. And I think that we should encourage developers to be creative and present creative site plans and give them guidelines, even more than numbers of stories and square footages of buildings, but that say, how can you incorporate some of the community elements that we want into your plans? In other words, how can you make trails? How can you make transit? How can you make housing? How can you make, for example, libraries and art centers and meeting facilities and, creative spaces that, we keep using that word vitality, that will help to make whatever new spaces they are be neither just commercial or just residential, but part of our living communities. Thank you. I know that was too long.
Thank you, Kathy. Other thoughts?
Excuse me, eating an orange. Thank you, Kathy, for those thoughts. As the youngest person here, I believe, I will represent the monopoly of all young voices in the Roaring Fork Valley and echo that the millennials do not want single-family homes. By the way, my name's AJ Hobbs. I grew up in Basalt, live in Carbondale, serve on Carbondale Town Council, and I would like to see the valley reunited. But specifically for this, a co-housing project I think is the best, which incorporates community living spaces, as in a communal area with a kitchen that is shared, so there's less pots and pans, less fuel being used, everyone can use it. You still have small kitchens in your own house. I believe that there should be 0 parking allowed, which would influence no cars and would influence bikes, and just have a pull-in and drop-off only lane, which would influence community sharing cars and public transportation. I think that the entire areas surrounding the community housing should be community gardens that can feed and sustain as much as the population as is possible given our climate, and that there should be 0 hotel or specific lodging, and instead we should focus on Airbnb and letting people come and live with other folks, which creates that very communal aspect that allows tourists to get a true experience and to really connect with people here and the community, instead of the disconnect that is currently present with high-end hotels, second homes, and people not being occupied. I have heard a lot of comments from the younger people who are not here that they want to focus on music, natural amphitheaters, nature, and making sure that we protect and cherish this area that we all come to love, which is the water, the land, the trees, the air. And the smaller the stories, the better, because we want to see the sun, the mountains, the sky. Thank you.
Thank you.
AJ, it's on. I just got to say, I actually disagree with quite a bit of what you said, but I watched AJ grow up. He's one of my youngest son's good friends, and how great is it to have a second generation here and publicly speaking out? How terrific is that? Thanks for showing up. That's neat.
Thanks, John.
Can I have one more thing?
No, you can't. Susan's rules, yep.
Thanks,
Okay.
You can send me, go on our town planning site, you can comment there, susanp@basalt.net.
Okay, more comments, yes.
I'm Kathy Click, and I guess to address some of the things that are on the chart, I would say that I support the idea of the V, just simply, I support it. I feel that the scope and the mass of the buildings as presented is enormous. If the RMI building is 17,000 square feet and it's 2 stories, that means its footprint is probably 8,500 square feet, I'm guessing. I feel that the buildings as proposed totally eclipse that in terms of scale. And I would prefer to see buildings that support the scale and size of Old Town buildings, not incredibly large you know, tall I don't care as much about as huge. And I feel that if we give that up, then it doesn't really matter what happens with the V, because we will be taking the river and the park and cutting it off. I have concerns about a hotel and residences there. I don't think that's what your focus is at this point. I think if you're talking about acceptable uses, I would prefer to see more interesting opportunities for small businesses and river-oriented businesses, or businesses that support and sort of celebrate the out of doors, which is what we all say we're here for, rather than having a hotel and residences which can potentially go more towards the center of town at a later date. I also feel that we need to really rethink the whole transportation piece, and I completely support looking at RAFTA and getting rid of parking garages under a river, which I don't think is sustainable. I think that we have a sustainable institution that's coming to town, and I think it would be very thoughtful if we looked at what they stood for and tried to incorporate some of those ideas into any other kind of development that we have on these 3 parcels or other parcels. And finally, I feel that I do think that there are so many possibilities for Basalt coming up, and I think that the idea that we have to put all of them on these 3 parcels is not looking really towards the future, and is overloading these parcels with way too many expectations and potential something. That's it.
Thank you, Kathy. Kathy served on the DAC committee as well.
Hi, I'm Deborah Ritchie. I agree with all 3 of the last speakers, and I'd like to say that during this process, it's been almost 3 years, and I've been trying to lease up property in Basalt, and it's been difficult, and I feel like if nothing else, can we get the park in a place where it doesn't look like we're in continued construction, where we can actually invite people here for the beauty, and when we get to a place that we agree on everything, then we can move forward. But right now, we've been moving dirt for 2.5 years. It looks terrible, feels terrible. That's it.
Thank you.
I'm coming, Norm.
My name is Norm Clayson, and I just want to talk a little bit to the P&Z about why this all started in the first place. And I think it somehow is getting confused and should be brought back into the fore. The reason that a lot of this happened is because the downtown core of Basalt has been suffering immensely for a number of reasons. Certainly when the highway bypassed the town, which it had to do, that was one thing that left us somewhat isolated. And when Willits began its development and it got its anchor tenant in Whole Foods, and it started dragging away a lot of our businesses, I think I have so far identified about 13 or 14 major businesses which have left our downtown core and left us really in a spot that we were looking for something to help us revitalize, not something to turn us into a Las Vegas or an Aspen or whatever, but something that would bring people to the town. The opportunity came when the CDC parcel was purchased to build some commercial and residential that would bring people to the downtown core of Basalt and help revitalize our downtown businesses. Now, some people claim that their businesses are just fine. I happen to own a business or a building downtown, and I can tell you that we're struggling. We're really struggling hard. The idea of having a hotel was one which we said would bring bodies to the town. Originally, the whole idea was to bring bodies to the town, revitalize the downtown core. The things that I see up here are, they're no question, they're big and they're somewhat onerous. I've listened to the comments tonight, And unless we keep focusing on the fact that our town is just going to, I'm afraid, sooner or later just dry up, bringing some of the things that have been suggested to town are wonderful. They're going to bring some people to town. But what it really needs is bodies. It needs bodies that are here in the winter as well as the summer. Summer we do very well here, surprisingly. In the winter we're just dead. And the hotel was that key. The residences that go with it, I happen to agree with somebody who said some of those residents should be also rentable when they're not used. I think that's a good use. No sense just sitting there empty. All the other things that I heard mentioned, are wonderful. I mean, they're all things that should be considered. They're having pathways between buildings. For me personally, if I look at, and I happen to agree with Kathy on this, when I look at a big, massive building, I don't see the friendliness sometimes that I feel in the downtown core. I think it's wonderful to have sometimes smaller buildings where you have more storefronts, where you have people that can be exposed as they walk through the various buildings to what's there, instead of one big building where they have to go inside of it and find things. But I just don't think that we can lose track of why we started this whole process in the first place. Because I feel as sometimes we're getting mired down in a lot of different things instead of really thinking about what we're trying to accomplish, and that's keeping Basalt alive and making it the vital and wonderful place that I think we all agree it should be, and maintain its character. So I asked the P&Z to consider the character of what you're about to improve in terms of walkable spaces that can be used for all kinds of different things instead of one big massive building. But I guess that's all I have to say. I just want to see this community come together. We've been through this process now for a couple of years. And when people come up to me and say, well, gee, I had no idea they were going to build a hotel here, or I had no idea they were going to, that's all baloney. We've been doing this for a long, long time. And we've worked hard at it. Everyone has worked hard at it. Everyone has had their say. And it's been sometimes a little bit rough, but at other times it's been very, very beneficial to this community to hear what other people have to say and how that can be applied. So for me personally, I think we're beyond the fact that we're 2 years back. We're 2 years forward from where we started. Let's put the P&Z to work in finding the best possible use. Let's try and incorporate some of the things I just heard a minute ago about interconnecting things and having vitality for young people as well as old people. We have a great opportunity here. But we can't take a small piece of ground, which Basalt is. I used to always say before it kind of grew, it went from a barber shop to a caboose. It was a pretty small piece of property. But in order to do that, you have to consider going up. You can't consider going out. As soon as you start considering going out, you're eating up everything that is vital in open space. The only thing you can do is go up. So when I look at 3 stories, it doesn't bother me. There's a 5-story building in town. It's been there for many, 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 many years. There's buildings now in town that are 3 stories. It doesn't seem to be, to me anyway, something that's terribly objectionable. And I think if we do it right with open space and particularly spaces in between buildings where we can all enjoy it, and we focus on getting bodies into town, focus on mixed use, focused on things that I think will really help revitalize the town, I think we can all finally get along together and we'll have a great plan.
Thank you, Matt.
My name's Ted Guy. I was also on DAC. I've owned a business in Basalt since 1983. I'm currently a resident of Basalt. I do not support the V because it's full of trees and it will provide no visual connection from Midland Avenue to the river. It's not fit for the purpose that we say we're going to use it, and we're certainly not going to cut down all those beautiful trees. I think that addressing the list, that we should zone this development parcel and all the parcels that don't have the zoning as C2. It's primarily the rest of downtown Basalt. It allows 2 stories by right. It only allows 3 stories for hotels and a couple of other very special uses. I agree with what I heard here earlier today, that breaking up the massing, lots of little pedestrian ways, that's one of the elements that makes Midland Avenue so great. 1- and 2-story buildings, pedestrian ways that take you back behind the buildings up into the residential neighborhoods. That's an element that I think must be included in any new development in Basalt. I think basically, so far as number of stories, acceptable uses, square footage of buildings, perhaps we say, you can only build 6,000 or 8,000 square feet footprint before you have a pedestrian way, and let other people site-specific design or project-specific design. The last thing I want to say is, one of the things that I love more than anything about Basalt is 2 Rivers Road, and driving in from Aspen or driving in from where I used to live on Willits. To close that off to vehicles, to me, kills the heart of Basalt. It should remain, it is part of our railroad heritage, and should never, ever be closed. This park, with the development, is more than large enough for this town. We have 28.3 acres of land going from Old Pond Park up to the Upper Bypass Bridge. That's huge. In addition, Jadwin will bring in more land. Redevelopment of the Roaring Fork Mobile Home Park will bring in more parkland. We're going to have 32 or 33 acres of town-owned park along a river. Nobody else has that anywhere on the western slope. We should stay with the blueprint we started a couple of years ago. Thank you.
Any other hands? Oh, here.
I'm Mark Kwasinski. There's a lot of good comments. I'll try to keep my just with respect to the master plan. I agree with Ted about the 2 Rivers Road, and a couple other people have mentioned the 2 Rivers Road. I think it's just vital important to keep that open. There's a couple of reasons, not only just transportation wise. I mean, if we're going to get people in here, why would you cut off or make a one-way street out of one of the the main thoroughfares? The other thing is with excuse me, with 2 Rivers Road, I just want to point at the map here. This is the option that I have personally favor. With 2 Rivers Road, let's see, it was 3C I was looking at. Well, with 2 Rivers Road coming through, here it is. I'm thinking it's here, but there's about 20. I counted the parking spaces. There's about 28 parking spaces right there. And sure, it'd be nice to think that we're going to transpose ourselves into a bicycle community and nobody's going to be using a car. But the access to the park, to me, it's very, very important not to eliminate those parking spaces. I think that the options number 3s are the only ones that we should be looking at right now. The option 4 with eliminating the 2 Rivers Road also privatizes. It will make the whole area feel like sort of like an upper end private development, and that's not what Basalt needs. A couple other things as far as the zoning. I did read through the C2 zoning, and I think that the CDC parcel is so important that it should be approved on a PUD basis, like the way that it's going right now. I think the public, it is absolutely positively the most important parcel that Basalt has, because if that is done right, it's going to make everything else super friendly into the future, and there's been so much interest expressed in that. So if you're going to zone the Merino parcel and you're going to zone the Lions Park and over at Clark's Market, C2C, okay, but I don't think that the CDC parcel should be rezoned, and it should go through the UD process. I started out wanting all park, and I guess I am a middle child, so to speak, and I do care what my neighbors say. I've listened to a lot of the people who are wanted a lot more development than me, and so I have, somewhat come to a compromised position in my mind, which is 3C. I think that the option 3C would be acceptable from my perspective. I don't agree that the Lions Park area and also the Marino parcel are necessary to incorporate, because the development that can happen in there is, it's a very profitable, very nice development. And Basalt's not going to dry up and die. I think Basalt has been through a really bad period, and we're coming out of it now. And we can't, as Kathy Click said, expect too much from the CDC parcel or all this area, because there's a lot more of Basalt to develop. So let's keep that in mind and be patient. I know it's been tough. A lot of people have been through a lot of really tough times, but let's just be patient. I think we're headed down the right road with the development, and I think that this process has been very positive. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you don't get a chance to speak today, or you don't feel up to standing up in front of the public, write your comments and deliver them to the town. Really, I mean, it's going to weigh the same way, because the P&Z will receive those comments. So we've got about 9 minutes to go. Steve, we're going to hold double comments. We really just want to get people who have not spoken yet. And is there anybody else who would like to address the P&Z? Yeah.
There are 2 points that might.
Why don't you speak out?
Okay. Well, I didn't want to be a double commenter.
Well, you're a presenter,
okay.
So go ahead. You're clarifying.
Well, there are a couple points that were made that if we can clear things up just factually, I thought it'd help. So, and one I'm going to ask you too, Mike, but there was a comment or a question made about timing and construction timing, and can we get this part going? I think was kind of the comment. Let's get rid of the dirt. So I just wanted to point out a couple things relative to, so the red outline is the entire CDC parcel. That is a privately owned parcel, the whole thing, even though only half of it's painted pink. And a representative of the CDC is here, but that is just like any other privately owned parcel in land, or privately owned parcel in town, is not up for us to say, I want to start planting grass there now. It is a privately owned parcel, and until that can be rezoned, by the way, the current zoning, and again, someone correct me if I'm wrong, the only thing that can happen there now is a trailer park. It's zoned as a trailer park, so that is the only use by right. But we as the community don't have the right to ask the landowner to do anything there until there is some agreement. So that could stay dirt or fenced or anything else. And yes, please.
Of course, that's fine, but with anything that is that impactful to the town, isn't there a way that we can ask this private owner to make it look less like a construction zone while they're deciding what they're going to do? Because having fences from the river to River Road across, where we're not actively in construction, would be nice to just limit where we are in the institute and open that up, even though we don't private.
Well, so I just, and again, in trying to just factually, I was just trying to point out that we can ask any landowner to do anything, but that is not ours to mandate, dictate. I just wanted to point that out again factually. Okay. Yep.
I think that can be debated, because the town of Basalt went into this whole deal. It was a quasi.
Could, well, and again, I just could we have? And so I'm trying to. I don't want actually trying to start debate. Could we?
So Mike Scanlon, town manager. Okay, so I've been here 2.5 years, so I know that that hasn't been under construction for 2.5 years, because I remember what the first year and a half was like. The last trailer was moved April 17th, 2014. That would be 1 year and 40 days ago. So it's been 1 year and 40 days. If weather works to our favor, and we hope that it does, the Midland Park side, which is this side of the river, should be completed, let's say August 15th. As we work on the other side, and we get to final site elevations, I have boulders that we're getting rid of, and I think someone in here might even ask for boulders today. And we gave them away freely. And we have more if you need them. As we start planting, and I believe it's willow bundles along the river, as well as some willows in the wetlands. So there's that wetland area that you see that is between the path. So there's the river, the new path that you see, the wetlands area, a park area, and then the CDC site. So as we basically work through the wetlands and through the river and get it planted, ACC, which is the contractor, is also working on Old Pond Park. So you've seen the elevation of Old Pond Park go down as they make improvements to Old Pond Park. And it's part of an entire system that they're trying to basically reconstruct so that it does what was intended via our core permit, which is river restoration. And I'm going to keep coming back to, this is a river restoration project. It's not a park project. If and when the community decides what they want the park area to look like on the other side of the wetlands, then we can start talking about it. We're going to put grass in because we have to hold the dirt down so that you don't have dust like we had yesterday. We had a couple big dust storms that blew through there. There will be irrigation on the top. So we're going to be putting pipe on top of the ground so that we can get some grass established to hold it. But as John pointed out, that parcel is actually owned by the CDC. I or the town, we currently have a temporary construction easement that allows us to be on their property so that we can construct the necessary river improvements and change the elevation of the site so that it comes out of the floodplain. And that was a condition of our conditional letter of map revision, which we had with FEMA, which is required when you're trying to get a letter of map revision, which would then remove the parcel from the floodplain. As it sets today, it's still in the floodplain, but as we approach the end of construction, it'll be eligible for a letter of map revision. So we're working as fast as we can. If Mother Nature participates and helps us, we will actually be able to green up the site July and August. Of course, understand that's the worst time to try to grow grass because it's the hottest time, but that's our hope and our goal.
Okay. Bring up your comments. Could you address them personally after the meeting? Because that way we can move through and without being mic'd, it's just not going to do service to the presentation here. So thank you. We're really at the end. We have time for maybe one more very brief comment. But again, if you don't want to speak and you feel like write your comments and submit them to the town. Susan can accept them, and the P&Z will get them. Is there anything that P&C would like to add to the proceedings? Okay. Okay. All right. Just open ears, open ears. All right, one last comment. You can sum it up, and then we're going to do the field trip. State your name.
Jerry Kaharchik. I do live in Basalt, and I wouldn't want to live in Willits. Seriously. And I think in 5-10 years, you'll see a lot of people move out of Willits and come looking for some place like Basalt. And once you build something on the river, it's going to be there forever. Thank you.
Thanks. So, and thank you all for being here and continuing this process. I know it seems like a long time, but this is what it takes to build a community, and this is what it takes to derive community input. So thank you very much for your participation.